Welcome to the Action Network studio in New York City. I'm Maria Marino, and this is Green Dot Daily. You can find us every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action YouTube channel and the Action app. We missed you guys. We had a couple days off last week as we focused entirely on March Madness, but hope you had a phenomenal weekend watching both the men's and women's tournaments. The Final Four is set on the men's side, but on the women's side, we still have a couple spots to fill, so we are going to have an outlook on the games coming up this evening. We're also going to talk NBA and NHL, but as per usual this NFL offseason, it seems like we have to start with the NFL, and this time it's Lamar Jackson, who started to tweet some things earlier today, mainly that he requested a trade from the Ravens back on March 2nd. And this timing was interesting, perfect timing, you could say. John Harbaugh was just about to speak at the annual NFL meetings, so this was some of his reaction, and he said, you have to plan for all the contingencies for sure, but I'm pretty fired up about Lamar Jackson. He came back in great shape last year. He's fired up to play. That's the Lamar that I'm looking forward to seeing. I can't wait to get back on the grass and get to work. I'm confident that's going to happen. So let's get into this as we welcome in Gilles Gallant. And Harbaugh seems to be very confident that Lamar is going to stay his quarterback, but it sounds like it's a little naive. What do you make of this situation overall?
Yeah, Maria, honestly, I feel like John Harbaugh right now is doing a little bit of posturing. Obviously, he doesn't want to alienate the potential of him coming back, but I don't think the Ravens want to pay him. I think it's really noticeable and telling of Lamar saying that he asked for the trade on March 2nd, because that franchise tag announcement only came a couple days later. That was on March 7th. So clearly they had some discussions before that about an extension, and it probably didn't go well. And the last time that the Ravens paid their quarterback, you have to go all the way back to Joe Flacco. During that time with his contract, they were pretty cap strapped during that tenure, weren't able to make as many flexible moves, and they had Lamar so far on a rookie contract. And that's the best asset an NFL team can have, having a star quarterback on a rookie contract where they're paying him, not minimal, but, $30 million total over a 4 or 5 year period instead of $30 million a year. And now we have Lamar, who wants Deshaun Watson money, but I'm not sure if he can get to that spot, because he's kind of putting teams in a tough spot here, because you got to have to build your entire offense around Lamar and his skill set, plus trading some picks. And even recent memories, some of the big quarterback contracts we've seen, like Deshaun Watson again, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, they've all fallen like just horribly flat. So I could see why John Harbaugh is saying these things, but I don't really feel like we learned anything new today. We already kind of knew that there was some acrimony between both sides, and now it's just coming out a little bit more where maybe this is the nail in the coffin of seeing Lamar Jackson not being in a Baltimore Ravens uniform anymore.
Well, actions certainly speak louder than words, and as it stands, Lamar Jackson is not set to be a Raven. Why do you think they might not want to bring him back? Or maybe let me walk that back and say maybe they're just hesitant to bring him back. I would think that you could find some common ground, but so far, no dice.
Yeah, so they did offer him, at least reporting that they did offer him a pretty substantial contract, but he wants kind of closer to what Deshaun Watson is getting. And part of the reason why I think Baltimore doesn't want to pay him is ever since he won MVP, a lot of those passing metrics that you want in a starting quarterback like that, they've just kind of gone down. The accuracy, the yards per attempt, the passing yards. And because he's trying to be a little bit more of a pocket passer to reduce some of those rushing attempts, his sack numbers have gone up each year, so he's taking more hits. And the Ravens front office, they haven't really done much favors for him anyway. They traded Hollywood Brown. They signed guys like Sammy Watkins, guys that just aren't going to be really impactful for him to be able to be successful on the next level. Now, I will say Mark Andrews is still a stud, but once you get past him, it's really barren as far as passing options in that offense. So I could see why Baltimore is maybe wanting to, punt, as they say, on this and maybe try to get him to a lower contract extension. But from their standpoint, just looking at the metrics, especially for dual threat quarterbacks, it's just kind of trending downward. And I'm sure that they're probably not feeling like they want to be in a position where they get stuck with a contract like a Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson and have to be kind of cap strung because of it.
It's so interesting how dual threat quarterbacks are at times being seen as less favorable now because of the threat of injury. But as you were sort of alluding to, we have to look at the Ravens' responsibility in this as well, and the position that they've put him in and how they've asked him, to put his body on the line. Really quick, I want to talk about the odds because they haven't shifted that much lately on the Ravens. Since all the uncertainty, I would say they have gone down. What does that tell you?
Well, my initial instinct coming into this season was to look at the Steelers to win the AFC North. And now with this decision of this kind of public negotiation that's going on between Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, I like the Steelers even more to be able to win this division around 6-1, especially when you look at some of the odds of the win totals. The win totals that just come out, that's a very popular market for teams to look for bettors to look at to kind of see what odds makers are thinking for this overall front for each team. But the Browns, Ravens, and Steelers each have lines of over under 8.5 wins, whereas the Bengals are sitting there at 11.5. I think the Bengals are going to regress a bit just based on their cap situation and having to pay some players. Plus the fact that Deshaun Watson had just looked awful with Cleveland. And now the Steelers, they're getting a proper offseason with Kenny Pickett. TJ Watt should be back fully healthy. He got hurt for the first time in his career. He had normally played at least 15 games a year, and we saw how that defense immediately changed back to being able to stop the run and get to the quarterback. I mean, they finished 9-8 last year, Maria, with bad quarterback play. Like Deontay Johnson was 8th in overall targets. He didn't even catch a touchdown all year because that's how bad the passing offense was. So if they can go 9-8 with bad quarterback play and then actually get Pickett a proper offseason, I think they're going to be right there in the thick of it to be able to win that division again. So I love them the most right now based on the odds at 6-1.
Well, I love that you gave us something to potentially bet on. And look, we want to talk some NBA, but before we do that, I still wanted to see if you had somewhere that you thought that Lamar Jackson could end up. It seems that we have a few teams that potentially could have, high odds for that to happen. Any quick thoughts?
Yeah, quick thoughts. I've seen some of these odds. The Colts right now are probably the favorite to land him. I'm not sure if they're going to want to give up the 4th overall pick and then next year's pick, especially when they could get a quarterback on a rookie deal like Anthony Johnson, who had a lot of the same criticisms coming into the draft as Lamar did of not being maybe a traditional pocket passer. The Jets, I think they actually got the best deal out of this because they're the only team really negotiating with the Packers to get Aaron Rodgers. And now if there's a potential that Lamar could go there, that might be able to have sweeten the deal where they wouldn't have to maybe give up a 1st-round pick to get Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform. The Falcons, I think, would be a perfect matchup and setup for him. I'm not sure if they're in love with Desmond Ridder. They're around 6-1. But Maria, the sneaky pick for me that I think that a team that could go after Lamar is the Tennessee Titans at plus 1,000. They're not in love with their quarterback situation with either Ryan Tannehill or Malik Willis. Ryan Tannehill is in the last year of his contract. You saw in the playoff game, they wouldn't even let Malik Willis throw the ball or Josh Dobbs. Derrick Henry being there could help lighten the load, especially on those rushing attempts. It's a run-first offense, so I don't think they'd have to adapt as much as some other teams if they were to get Lamar. So if I was to pick any team, my heart tells me that the Falcons, that's the team that he should go with, but my betting heart saying we got to look at the Titans at 10-1.
Heart and betting heart, two very different things. Okay, thank you for indulging me on that. Now we can get to NBA. Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit there. This is obviously the real reason we wanted to have you on today, and here is what's on tap. As we look at some of the key matchups, Milwaukee laying double digits, but most of the money on Detroit to cover. Dallas also at Indiana. Luka Doncic avoids suspension, so he's available to play. And the Nuggets favored hosting Philly. Joel Embiid ruled out with a calf injury. Now, Jill, you like to say it's 3 p.m. somewhere, as in 3-pointers made. So which 3-point player props do you like for this evening?
Sure. So why don't we start with the Rockets versus the New York Knicks? And the first guy I want to bet on is Jalen Green. Going to look at his over 2.5 3-point prop at plus 110. So Jalen Green, he leads the team in minutes per game, 3-point attempts per game at 7.4. He's hit this prop now in 4 of the last 5 games overall. The Rockets, they're actually on a second game of a back-to-back. So initially that might make you a little cautious on wanting to bet on star players in 3-point positions, but he's actually hit this in 6 of 9 games in this spot this season. He also played the Knicks back in January, went 3 for 6 from 3-point in that game. Now, the Knicks, even though they are strong defensively, they've actually been slipping on the perimeter recently. In their last 5 games, teams are shooting over 44% from 3-point on them. That's last in the NBA in that stretch. They rank 27th in opponent 3-point shooting in March, just around 41%, and allowing the 3rd most 3-point makes per game. So now you're looking at a game between the Rockets and the Knicks. Like any game involving the Rockets might as well just be a rec league game. Like there's not really a lot of structure of what they do. They don't really play a lot of defense. And I think Jalen Green playing at Madison Square Garden, I think there's a little bit of motivation there to try a little bit harder, maybe even put on a show for that crowd. So Jalen Green over 2.5 3-pointers at plus 110 is my first best bet for tonight.
And I know you have more than that. So what else?
Well, this one is almost 2 on the nose. It's like a hat on a hat for a 3-point prop. This guy he has like the perfect name for a 3-point prop. Trey Murphy III. And he's got a line that's going to make people a little nervous because it's one of the higher lines you can get, especially for a second-year player. It's over 3.5 3-point props at plus 140 versus the Blazers tonight. So Trey Murphy in March has just taken off. 47 from 3-point range on 9.2 attempts per game. That only trails Steph Curry. And he's hit this prop in 5 of the last 7 games. One of those was actually versus the Blazers. He shot 9 for 14 from 3-point range in that game. And the volume has just been very consistent this month. 9 or more 3-point attempts in 8 of 12 games. So we got the volume, but I talk about this a lot on the show, Maria, about how I like to look at the shot splits. Like, where are the shots coming from for each player? So for Trey Murphy for the season, he's at 62% for all of his shots coming from behind the arc. Pretty good number, but when you actually break it down to March, that increases to 71%. That's top 5 in the NBA. And the Blazers just tanking right now. They don't give any F's anymore about this season. They have shut down Damian Lillard. They're 3-10 this month. They rank 26th in points allowed per game, just letting teams get whatever they want. For the season as well, of how they guard opposing guards, they rank 25th in opponent 3-point makes and 3-point shooting percentage to opposing guards. And then when you actually zoom in a little bit and you look just for March, in 13 games, that actually jumps to 28th. So they're a team right now that pretty much anybody is getting what they want from a 3-point perspective. So Trey Murphy III over 3.5 3-pointers made is my second best bet for tonight.
Trey for Treys. I mean, it just sounds right. Gilles Gallant, thanks so much for hanging with us and talking some NFL and NBA.
Sounds good. We'll talk next week.
All right, now for some more player props, we send it over to Joe Delara.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Delara, and I've got 2 of my favorite plays for this Monday NBA slate. The first play that I'm looking at is Giannis Antetokounmpo over 28.5 points against the Detroit Pistons. Look, I know that there's a lot of concerns about a blowout in this game, but that's actually one of the pieces that I like in this handicap for Giannis's points. Look, over the course of this season, Giannis has gone over this line of 28.5 points in 8 of 12 wins by 15 or more points. And one of those unders was a 6-minute game against the Miami Heat. So can't even really count that game here in the same way. Additionally, over the course of the season, he's absolutely destroyed the Detroit Pistons. He's gone over this line in all 3 games against Detroit this season and 6 straight dating back to last year with 1 miss at 28 points. So this line, I think it's just a touch too low in a game that Milwaukee should be able to take care of business with ease. And Detroit really just doesn't have any way to stop Giannis. And this is an important game still for the Bucks as they're looking to fend off both the Celtics and the 76ers for not only the number 1 seed in the East, but the overall number 1 seed in the NBA. I like Giannis to go over 28.5 points today against the Detroit Pistons. For my second play, we're looking at the Phoenix Suns, and we're looking at specifically Devin Booker, under 5.5 assists. While we've generally seen an uptick from Devin Booker when he's played alongside DeAndre Ayton, we have to really take into consideration the fact that he's also playing in this game with Chris Paul. So when Booker has played alongside Ayton, he's averaged 5.6 assists per game. However, in the games that he's played alongside both Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, we see that drop to just 4.7 assists per game. This game against the Jazz, I think that this really sets up as more of a scoring game for Devin Booker, considering the Utah Jazz have Walker Kessler on the interior that they can use to defend DeAndre Ayton. I think that this assist line is just a touch too high, especially at the fact that we're getting plus money on the under of 5.5. And that's a line that he's gone under in 7 straight games and 70% of games on the season playing next to Chris Paul. I like Devin Booker to go under 5.5 assists today against the Utah Jazz. So to recap, my 2 favorite plays for today's NBA slate are Giannis Antetokounmpo over 28.5 points and Devin Booker under 5.5 assists. Best of luck on your wagers today and enjoy the rest of your Mondays.
Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now give me some more March Madness. I'm glad we still have hoops to watch tonight with the second leg of the Women's Elite Eight. 2 great matchups, Maryland taking on big-time favorite South Carolina, and then Ohio State, a slight dog, going up against Virginia Tech. To preview it all, we welcome back to the show Dano Mataya. He's an analyst for Her Hoop Stats, also does some writing for Action Network. Let's start with this Maryland-South Carolina matchup. Do you think Maryland can keep this closer than some people might think?
Absolutely. I'm all over the Terps. I mean, I took them at plus 1,300 to win this region. And I really think they can get out to a good start, maybe get ahead. You could probably, get the Gamecocks live. But I think 14.5 is too many points. They played earlier this year. South Carolina did end up winning by 25 points, but they were only up 6 at half. And the, future lottery pick, Diamond Miller, did not play this game. Diamond averages over 19 points and 6 rebounds a game. She is absolutely a huge factor. I don't say she's worth 20 points and they're going to win this outright, but Brenda Freeze in March, I trust her. I think they're going to run a 2-3 zone, and I feel really good about the Terps just keeping it somewhat close. Do lean the under. I will probably have an article on Action about the total in this game coming out soon.
Good to know, and nice little plug. I agree about Brenda Freeze. I think she's a great coach and she knows what it takes. And do you also think that there is an element here of the pressure side of things with South Carolina just having sort of that hanging over them, understanding that they are the undefeated team and they are the favorites to win it all?
Oh, yeah. Perfect season. I mean, they got the target on their back completely. This group has not done a perfect season. I don't think we've had one since Breonna Stewart, right? So I'm all for it. I mean, I would love to see, the best defense go up against, Caitlin Clark, who almost outscored Miami yesterday by herself. But I love the Terps. I love the Terps. Can't get enough of them.
Yeah, I agree. I've been looking forward to this matchup for a while, so I think we're going to have a pretty close game, and I'm looking forward to that. How about the nightcap? Ohio State, Virginia Tech. These are a couple of teams that people might not know as much about. So going into this, what do we need to know?
One, they're my 2 darlings. I love them. Virginia Tech is so hot right now. They haven't lost since January, right? Their defense, their pace is excellent. Georgia Amore may be the hottest guard on the planet. And I'm talking shooting-wise, obviously. She cannot miss lately. And it's starting right from the tip. It's not someone who needs, to get in a rhythm. She has delivered every game. And, of course, they have the back-to-back ACC Player of the Year and Liz Kitley. And they're coached by Kenny Brooks, who has just been elite and poised all year. But we have Ohio State, who started off the season 17-0. Then they hit a rough patch, losing 6 of the last 7 going into the tournament. And I or going 6-7 in the last 13 going into the tournament. But their press is unlike anything that teams see in March Madness. So we saw that with UConn, right? Close game to start, but then when that press gets going, UConn, I think, had played against press only 10% of their like total possessions this season. So even if they had a week to prepare for that game, there's nothing like it. And the press continues to wear on teams as they go. And with that press, with the Virginia Tech pace, I really love this under. I think we've seen 3 Ohio State games go under now, against teams like UConn, North Carolina. The JMU game in the first round did go over, but Ohio State got off to a bad start there. So I really feel good about this. We've got 2 teams who have not been to this stage in a long time. Virginia Tech has never been to a Final Four, and Ohio State hadn't been there since 1993. It's a lot of pressure.
It's really exciting. One of these programs obviously will go to a Final Four, and we'll get to see, a new exciting matchup. And I think you hit it with that Ohio State press with UConn. It's just so disturbing in the moment. It's like really impossible to break free if you're not really experienced with that. But yeah, I think that under makes a lot of sense. Dano Mataya, thanks for joining Green Dot Daily. Hopefully we'll talk to you again later in the week from the Final Four in Dallas.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
From the hardwood to the ice, and Connor McDavid has been on a tear, scoring 18 goals in his past 16 games, leaving us all to wonder if he can reach the prestigious 70-goal mark for the first time since the 1992-93 season. So to explore that very topic, we welcome in our Action Network NHL writer, Nick Martin. So he needs 10 goals to reach 70. He's got 9 games left. Can McDavid do this? Is it worth betting on? And what are your thoughts on milestone betting in general?
Yeah, so to talk specifically to McDavid, I would lean towards betting no. I know this is out there. It's a bettable market at plus 500. I would pass on doing that. I think if you're going to look at this, you want to be betting him game by game to get multi-goals and that sort of thing. That's what it's going to come down to, especially because Edmonton, in all likelihood, will rest him 2 games unless it works out where it's a really critical final game in terms of playoff seeding. But chances are he's going to end up sitting. So I would factor that into handicapping this. But yeah, to talk about like milestone betting in the NHL, I think this can be a really profitable market because players know it and they're going to try to help their teammates get them. And especially with the empty net, this is a thing where in game you can get on some live numbers for players to score the last goal. And they're usually quite long. And we see this all the time. We've seen it with Ovechkin versus Winnipeg this year. We saw it with Matthews last season when he got his 50th in the empty net. Teammates will try to set those guys up. There's a couple of different little things that go into whether or not maybe it's the right time for it. You want to think about the kind of thing, what the game means to a team, whether or not those players will be out there. Like there's certain spots where coaches will just want their best defensive players and you're not going to try and get it. So you want to think about that sort of thing. But it can be a really interesting and profitable market. And like it's one of the funnest bets you can have, I would say, to try and pick off one of these last goal scorers where you think you've got an edge because of the milestone. And it's fun because so all these live algorithms, they're not updated for this sort of thing. Like there's no one sitting there watching, changing the prices based off this, unless maybe they took on an alarming amount of action. It's kind of just set to their usual prices. So yeah, I think it's a really fun angle.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's worth really paying attention to when he's getting close to that milestone, whether or not he's playing, and whether it's achievable in that moment. So very cool. As for tonight, 6 games on the NHL slate. Which one are you going to be especially dialed into?
So I'm going to be especially dialed into the Colorado-Anaheim game. I think that this is a really good spot to bet the over. The Avs are going to have Jonas Johansson in goal, who's achieved surprisingly reasonable results this season, but I wouldn't bank on that continuing. And I think that's actually a good thing here because we might be seeing totals of 7 if he had done as bad as he'll probably do over a larger sample. So that makes me think the Ducks are more likely to score 3 than they would be versus Colorado on average. Colorado also played yesterday in Arizona, so I think there's some strong arguments to say that Anaheim can actually put up some offense in this matchup. But with that said, if they do, and it's a close game, we're going to see the stars from the Avs play bigger minutes, and that's a really good thing for the total. Guys like McKinnon, Makar, Rantanen, they should feast in this matchup versus the Ducks. So I think it's a good time to go with the square angle and bet on the over here.
Fair enough. And you also have your sights on a player prop as well. What do you got?
So Dylan Cousins to go over 2.5 shots, I think is a really good bet. Playing him to get a goal is also very reasonable. I would probably just kind of pick between my sports books that you had at your disposal and pick the best price relative to the rest of the market. So, if your book has the best shot price being -115, I would play that. If you're somewhere that has anytime goal at +250, I would go there. So with Tage Thompson out, we're going to see some guys from Buffalo step up. And the second line is an area that I think they should dominate tonight. They hold a huge edge over Montreal. Peterka, Cousins, and Jack Quinn, they've played to actually a higher expected goals per 60 than even Buffalo's top line this year. They're a really, really strong unit, and I don't think Montreal has anyone to match with them, especially if the top line's still drawing the tougher defensive assignments. So I think this is a great play. I think you could convince me on anyone from that second line, any prop tonight, and probably have some value there, I think. And especially if you're a DFS guy too, I think this is a really solid play.
Well, you've convinced me. Nick Martin, thank you so much for keeping us informed on the world of the NHL.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
In addition to what you just heard from Nick on the NHL, we also had NBA and Women's Elite 8 picks on today's show. Remember, you can keep track of these and more by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's going to do it for this episode of Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for hanging with me, and I will see you right back here tomorrow. That's Tuesday at 3 Eastern on the Action YouTube and the Action app.